For many years now, people have been talking about Strava for climbers. Now, whilst Strava is available for climbers, the amount of detail you get from it is very low. And until now, there hasn't really been a device that provides you with that physiological information of what's happening during your session. So presently, I record all of my climbing through RockFacts Digital and the UKC logbooks. But whilst I can record how each route went and memories throughout, it doesn't provide me with physiological data. And that is where COROS Vertix 2S comes in. I reviewed the COROS Vertix 2 back in 2022 when it was initially released. And within that review, I focused on its usage for climbers, hill walkers, and mountaineers. Within this review of the COROS Vertix 2S, I'll be focusing primarily on its usage for climbers and mountaineers, because there's been some major updates both within the software, within the watch itself, and within the hardware and accessories, which have been a bit of a game changer. We'll be bouldering indoors, outdoors, and doing a few routes to not only put it through its paces, but explain how it works and what data you get out of it. So when it comes to the difference between the Vertix 2 and the Vertix 2S, it's worth highlighting that this isn't a major upgrade. This isn't a Vertix 3, which incidentally isn't even a thing yet. The updates revolve around two major areas: the accuracy of the GPS, particularly when in climbing mode, and the accuracy of the heart rate monitor. Now, from a climber's perspective, it's actually the former that is the most interest, the GPS side of things, because climbing is a really challenging environment as far as GPS is concerned. You're often climbing on steep, occasionally overhanging walls, depending on how good you are. And you're also in steep-sided valleys. You're potentially even in cracks, chimneys, and offwits, none of which are good as far as GPS signal is concerned. COROS have implemented an updated algorithm within climbing modes so that it will counter this and be able to give you a smooth, uninterrupted GPS signal that won't look weird when you do end up uploading it onto Strava afterwards. When it comes to the heart rate monitor, that is potentially of more interest and relevance from a runner's perspective. Opinions are divided about whether or not climbing with or without a watch on are what you want to do. It's very much personal preference. As you'll notice, I'm climbing with the watch on my wrist. I'm not using the external heart rate monitor or the carabiner, although those would be options. Climbing indoors, I don't mind climbing with it on my wrist too much, but climbing outdoors, I definitely prefer it externally, not least if I'm jamming inside cracks. I don't want it to get in the way or get scratched. And this is where the accessories come in. The first up is the carabiner. Now, this has been significantly updated and upgraded since it was first released back in 2022. My main concerns with the original were that it didn't have any locking mechanisms, both for the watch or for the carabiner itself. And that has been updated, so there's now a lock on the carabiner, so it's not going to get undone by accident. And then the same with the watch, so it's much more secure, which is really important when you're wearing a watch that costs you multiple hundreds of pounds. You don't want to lose it. However, if you have your heart rate monitor on a carabiner, it means that you haven't got it on your wrist. Thus, it's not reading your heartbeat, and therefore only gives you a certain, I guess like half of what you might want out of the data from that session. You'll still get things like distance, and you'll still get the number of problems or routes you've done, but you won't get your heart rate. And that's kind of the interesting stuff. And this is where COROS' heart rate monitor comes in. Now, you'll notice that this fits around the arm as opposed to around your chest. And I infinitely prefer this. I am definitely not a fan of chest-based heart rate monitors. They always feel a bit awkward, they always feel kind of uncomfortable, and also they're just a bit cold and horrible when you put them on. This, in comparison, is much nicer and much easier, and significantly more low profile. So depending on your personal preference, you may just require the watch and wear it on your arm whilst climbing, be that for bouldering or for routes or for mountaineering. And if you are looking at climbing routes in particular, potentially mountaineering, then the carabiner and heart rate monitor solution is potentially a more optimized one From a boulderer's perspective, it's a good way of keeping track of how many problems you have climbed and what grades you've done and in what style. There's also a whole host of differing workouts on the COROS website set by the likes of Stefano Gazolfi and Babsy Zangel, which are worth taking advantage of as well. Earlier this year, the bouldering mode was integrated into the COROS system. So this allows you to track your sessions both indoors and out. And in order to do that, just takes the click of a button and then you can start your climb.
True.
Once you're done, click again and it'll indicate rest, and then you can log your climb according to the style in which you climbed it. So on this occasion, I had what is described as a red point attempt, and I worked the problem. The problem is 6B plus, and that is now recorded. It'll be interesting to see in years to come whether or not heart rate data plays more of a part within the climbing training mentality, because at the moment it doesn't, or at least not in the same way that it does within running and cycling. So it's good to be able to track something more tangible, like the quality and quantity of the problems you're climbing, through the medium of how many you're doing and what grade they are. Now I think from a climber's perspective, someone that's doing routes, there's a lot more within the Vertix 2S that is of relevance. Firstly, you can set in navigation so that it can get you from parking to the crag. Where we are in the Peak District today, that's not really a problem because it's a 5-minute walk in. But into mountain crags, both in the UK and abroad, that could be of more interest. You can also program in descent information off of the route, which again could be crucial if the weather is bad. Not an issue today. Now perhaps where I see this being most relevant is within mountaineering circles, because generally speaking the approach is that bit more complicated and there's the potential for the weather to be that bit worse. In something like Scottish winter, I could see the Vertix 2S being invaluable, getting you to the base of the route and getting you down the route as well afterwards. And perhaps within those days, there's a lot more interesting heart rate data to play about with, whether that be for the approach or the descent or the route itself. In light of that, this watch is probably going to be of most interest to multi-sport users. Those who don't just climb, but also run or cycle or do any number of differing activities. The Vertix 2S does track a lot of different activities. When it comes to using the Vertix 2S for climbing, the thing you've got to get used to is clicking that lap button, because you've got to do that before and after every climb. So we're about to start climbing, so we're going to turn the watch on to outdoor climb mode. We're right beneath the route, so we don't actually need to engage it in approach. We can go straight into the climbing. And you have to select the grading system you want to use. We're doing British Trad, so we're going to use the British Trad system. But if you're climbing on bolts, it might be the French grading system, or if you're climbing in America, it'd be the Yosemite decimal system. And there's a bunch of others for other grading systems worldwide. Wow, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I wish I'd have brought my micro wires. One pitch climbed, VS, done. It's crucial that you click that lap button, and that does take a bit of getting used to. I have definitely forgotten. As a result, it's a bit more involved than just going climbing as you would usually, or going climbing as you would usually and logging the routes on, say, Rockfax Digital or the UKC logbooks afterwards, because you've got to be a bit more involved during the session itself. It's also worth mentioning the other features that you get within the Vertix 2S, and that's through the COROS app. Features such as your resting heart rate, your heart rate variability overnight, and the amount you've slept, and also your fitness score. All are really good bits of information. The main thing that I've used these for is to indicate how well or how poorly rested I am, as that will allow me to know how hard I can go within the session that day, or how much I can just lay back on the sofa and eat crisps and relax. So from a climber's perspective, I think that the Vertix 2S is of most relevance to those climbers who are going to be doing routes or mountaineering. This isn't to say it's not relevant for bouldering, because it is. It's just that I think you get a wealth more data out of it if you are climbing routes. And some of those elements of functionality, like the ability to pre-program a route, both in terms of the approach and the descent, is invaluable. If you're a data nerd or a gear geek, you're going to absolutely love what you get out of it. And if you're not, maybe just stick to using a pen and paper.